On this episode of the Easton Dig, we visit the new animal shelter in Brockton. We talk to Alan Smart, an Easton resident and veteran, to discuss some of the various memorial squares around town. And we hear a ghost story from Stonehill College. All coming up on this episode of the Easton Dig.
Good evening, and welcome to Easton Dig, the show by ECAP volunteers about all things Easton. I'm Stephanie Weinstein.
And I'm Brian Wright. We have a great show for you guys tonight, so stay tuned. We'd like to start off with a story about some of those various plaques and memorial squares you may have seen while driving around town. Over the years, many Easton residents, both men and women, have served in wars, and Easton veterans honor them with these plaques.
Sometimes, as we hurry about, we tend to lose sight of what's important, what is worth remembering. Our busy days flash by, and our focus becomes slightly askew. As you've driven around town, you've seen them. There are 19 of them on 19 different street corners. Have you wondered what those blue signs were? Have you asked yourself, who were those men? They are Easton's hometown heroes, and these are their stories.
Veterans Memorial Park started out as an idea I had to erect some kind of memorial to recognize the names of all the men and women from Easton from World War II and all of the wars and conflicts that have preceded World War II. There hadn't been any memorials in town that listed all of the veterans from Easton who served in those wars. The town did have a Civil War memorial at the end of Center Street and the World War I bronze plaque on Main Street that listed all the names of those people from those wars. We as a veterans organization should undertake this project and make it happen. It was long overdue. There were a lot of excuses why we couldn't do it. People talked about the cost. How would we pay for it? Where would we put it? We couldn't afford it. To get our plan even started, the first phase was to find a location that would be suitable for a memorial on the scale and size that we wanted to undertake. We needed a piece of property that we would be able to expand on and to dedicate other memorials in memory of veterans of other wars. We wanted it to be a place of where people stopped, reflected, and remembered those who served and those who died. Some suggested building it down at the town hall, some said at Church Street, and others had other locations around town in mind. I had been looking at other pieces of land at the corner of Pond and Mechanic Streets, a lot that nobody took any interest in. And although it looked small and wasn't the choice of others, every time I looked at that site, it just seemed to look better to me. I found that it belonged to Arnold Tophius, who owned the shovel shop at the time. I called him and made arrangements to meet and explain our plan for this site and if he would be willing to sell it to us. In March 2004, Mr. Tophius gave us the land and the deed free of charge, and the property now belongs to the Veterans of Foreign Wars. Now that we had the land, phase 2 was to make a design of what the memorial would be like. The one name that we all agreed on was Shepard Williams, landscape architect. We had a meeting with Shep and showed him the piece of property and our rough sketches of the site and what our vision was. He took these sketches and put them together into a design that incorporated all the ideas we had in some of his own, and we approved those final plans. Now that the plans were done, we could proceed to phase 3. We needed someone to take these plans and to make them come to life. We decided on Ricky Martin. The choice couldn't have been a better one. Ricky didn't hesitate and took on the project full steam as our construction manager and began to clear the site, dig holes, pour cement, lay the granite and bricks. He coordinated all the orders and deliveries and put everything together. Phase 4 was finding the names. That was a huge task. We needed to be accurate. I initially found an old wooden World War II Easton honor roll that used to be at the Rockery during and after World War II with all the names of veterans from Easton who were in the service at the time. I found it in Clyde and Anna Craig's garage. That initial information helped make a good base for starting. We published those names and other information on the project in the local papers, requesting names of veterans who entered the service from Easton, and checked and verified everyone, including the spelling. It was a 2-year project just getting the names to a point where we were comfortable with engraving them. We had John Cendrone from Stoughton do all the engraving. The final results of everyone's work is what you see today. On August 29, 2004, we dedicated Veterans Memorial Park and the World War II Memorial with 612 engraved names. The project was built entirely from volunteer help. All the money spent was raised by our post and post members. We received a few larger donations from some businesses and individuals, and we sold bricks and 12 by 12 granite stones and granite benches for engraving. On September 17, 2006, we dedicated the Korean War Memorial with 206 names on 4 granite upright stones. It took us 4 years to research these names. And on September 28, 2008, we dedicated the Vietnam War Memorial with 459 names on 4 granite upright stones. It took us 2 years to research these names also. All of the veterans who died during these wars are identified with a gold star next to their name. The park does have a theme to it. The basic for the design of Veterans Memorial Park is the circle, representing the unity of resolve expressed by our country and its allies in defending freedom. The circle is executed in a band of granite, and in the circle is stone wall. The wall is not continuous. It is interrupted to reflect the disruption in the lives of all who were involved in the war. 3 stones placed in the break in the wall represents the area where the war was fought: land, sea, and air. Central to the design is the flagpole, rising from a field of green and upon which our nation's symbol flies. It's illuminated 24 hours a day. Behind the wall, hawthorn trees are planted representing the hawthorn edges of France, through which our troops struggled after D-Day. English ivy, Russian cypress, and Chinese cotoneastas are added to complete the tribute to our major allies. The 8 new stones added to Veterans Memorial Park represent sentries standing guard at the park. The names inscribed on the stones to the right, as you face the 3 tablets, are those who protected our liberty and freedom during the Vietnam War. The names that are inscribed on the stones to the left, as you face the 3 tablets, are those who protected our liberty and freedom during the Korean War. And we decided to first dedicate squares, corners, and locations around town in memory of veterans who had died during wartime, and to dedicate them as close to where they had lived as possible. We went over the list of names starting with World War II first, and dedicated the first square on August 20th, 2000 to Anthony J. Ponce at the corner of Sullivan and Pond Streets. There were 14 World War II veterans squares that our post dedicated. We dedicated the last World War II square on November 11th, 2001. We then dedicated the 1 Korean War veteran square on November 17th, 2002, and then we dedicated the 4 Vietnam veterans squares, the last one on November 9th, 2003. What we did first was go and start with one group of veterans, which was World War II. That was the biggest group. That was 14 World War II veterans who lost their life in World War II. We had to find information on them so we could talk about them, and we had to find pictures. Luckily, we found all that information, and some of the family was still alive. So once we put that together, of course, we invited the family, because that was one of our center points of dedicating the squares, to try to have the family members there, and they really appreciated that. all of the squares that we did a little research, because everything we did was research. We want to make sure it was accurate. We tried to put the squares where the person grew up, near their house or where they had lived, and we had pretty good success in doing that with, I'd say, most all those names. Putting that park together was really a tearful project for a lot of these veterans, and they really were glad to see it done.
Well, that was an inspirational story. In our next segment, the Dig looks at some cute animals that need your help. Ed Hands takes us to Brockton for a look at what happens to homeless animals in our area.
I always thought of an animal shelter as a sad place where animals were warehoused and forgotten. Then I visited the Animal Protection Center just over the line in Brockton on Elm Street Extension and discovered a wonderful place where animals are prepared for their new forever homes.
The room we're in right now is our cat lounge. This is our open cat room. We usually have anywhere from 10 to 13 cats in here. They're all adults, they're all spayed and neutered. My name is Kim Heise. I am the shelter manager at the Animal Protection Center in Brockton, Mass. The Animal Protection Center formed October of 2009 as a result of the MSPCA deciding to close their Brockton facility. So a group of volunteers formed the Animal Protection Center of Southeastern Mass to keep the shelter open, to continue to help the animals and the people of the community. If someone's interested in adopting, step one is to just come down and visit. People can come in here and visit with the cats that are available. And we have separate visiting rooms for cats that are in cages, take dogs for a walk, take bunnies out of cages. But we really want you to spend time with the animal you're interested in to make sure that it's going to be a good match. And once we found the match, and the staff and volunteers here, they know the animals really well, we'll sit down and talk to you to make sure it's going to be a good match for everybody. We do want all the family members to come down and meet the animal to make sure it's going to be a good fit for all the family members. And then there's a short application that we have you fill out. If you rent, we do need to speak to your landlord, and if you own your home, we just verify that with a mortgage bill or a tax bill. And then there is an adoption fee, and that varies depending on the individual animal. Mm-hmm. Adoption fee is by species and their spayed and neuter status, and if they've had money donated towards them. The brown and white one, that's Winston. He's about 7 months old. He's a Pit Bull Cane Corso mix. The little guy is a 2-year-old rat terrier.
As you can see, work goes on constantly to get the dogs socialized so that they can go home with their new owners. Some animals, however, are just social by nature.
And rats, they are so affectionate and they're so smart. A lot of people have trouble with their looks. The tail freaks a lot of people out, but if you get past that, they'll just hang out with you all day. They're great. We have a lot of volunteer opportunities here at the shelter. The biggest need that we have are for shelter volunteers, and those are people that we look to come in and help us care for the animals, and that's cleaning, scrubbing kennels, doing dishes, laundry, everything that we need to do to maintain the animals in a clean and comfortable environment, which is really important. And in doing those tasks too, there's always opportunities to socialize the animals, walk the dogs, pet the cats, pet the rabbits, get the rats out of their cage, because those are all really important things to keeping the animal stress level down, to make them more adoptable. And we're here 7 days a week, so we're looking for help every day. And sometimes, even if you just have an hour in the afternoon, you want to come over and walk dogs, that's great. It helps us. You have to be 16, and we do ask for a time commitment of 4 hours a week. If you can. For kids that are younger than 16, they can certainly come in and visit with their parent during open shelter hours, brush cats, brush rabbits, help walk dogs, even just sit in the cat lounge with the cats. They're absolutely welcome to do that. We also strongly encourage kids to get involved by doing things like donation drives for us, and they'll just take our wish list and make collection boxes. We've had a couple schools do this.
While at the Animal Protection Center, I met a very special cat named Poppet. Poppet benefits from 2 programs at the center.
Our Paws Toward Home program is a program that we set up so that folks who are not necessarily in a position to adopt an animal at this time but still want to do something to help the animals directly can donate money towards a specific animal's adoption fee. And Poppet is actually a recipient of another program that we started. It's our Mother's Day program. Poppet came in April with a litter of kittens. She went to a foster home, raised her kittens, came back, her kittens found homes within days, and she's still sitting here. So for all of our mom cats, the shelter pays for half of their adoption. Poppet is about 3 years old. She is a lovely cat. She does not like other cats.
We at ECAT would love to see Poppet adopted after her star turn on television, and so we've paid the remaining Paws Towards Home fees, and she is available free to any loving family who would like to adopt a single cat. Please think about that, and please visit our friends at the Animal Protection Center. It's a wonderful place to be, but it's not the same as a forever home.
Well, it's great that we have that new facility in our community now where all those animals can go that would normally, just not have a home.
Those animals were so cute. They were adorable. That rat, I think I might get Mr. Hands a rat for his birthday. I think he liked it. And the most important thing of all, we have to get that Poppet adopted.
We have to get Poppet adopted. And if anyone's looking for any volunteer opportunities, they're always looking for extra help down there. So. And in our last story tonight, we'd like to take a trip into history and a little ghost lore. Do you know the story of the Blue Mist? It's right in our backyards. Check it out.
Welcome to Haunted Places of Easton. I'm Marilyn Reguera. I'm here with Mr. Ed Hands, part of the Historical Society, and we're here at Stonehill College looking at the legend of the Blue Mist at the pond.
Well, the Blue Mist goes back to 1932 when there used to be an airport pretty much right where we're standing. The pond was at the end of the east-west runway, and there was a north-south runway that was pretty much where the current entrance to Stonehill is. And this was a very flourishing airport for many, many years. Stunt flyers from the Brockton Fair landed here. Rocky Marciano flew out of here in the 1950s. But the story of the Blue Mist goes back to its original owner, which was the second Frederick Lothrop Ames to live here at what was the Stone House Hill House Mansion. He flew across country in the very plane that we have a piece of here. Okay. And this is a piece of the plane that is the origin of the Blue Mist story. You can see it says here, Sunday at Tower Hill, Randolph at 1 p.m., November 6, 1932. And this is the plane that crashed.
Wow.
And you can see that it's a very small piece.
What?
Yep,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Wow.
Now, according to the stories that I've read, the plane didn't survive the crash very well, and that's why we have just small
Oh,
pieces
wow.
like
Yeah.
this. And of course, what happened was that the engine, which was oversized for the plane, was driven back into the cockpit, and all 3 people on board were killed. And in one newspaper story, it said that they were mutilated. Other people who were actually at the site said it was a very strange scene, that it looked like they were just sitting in the cockpit. According to the story, at least, that when they cut the people out of the cockpit, that Fred Ames was missing an arm or a hand, and was buried here in Easton, almost making it back to the airport. He was buried over behind Unity Church, and that subsequently his ghost has appeared here in a blue mist.
Yeah.
Okay, and the blue mist rises off of this pond here, oftentimes at Stonehill when the weather is warm and the water is cold, or vice versa, and drifts all across the campus. And supposedly Mr. Ames walks within the mist looking to replace that missing arm or hand that he has. Now, in reality, there's a lot more to the story. Mr. Ames, who had founded the Harvard Flying Club, took 2 members of the club up in the plane, a younger boy and girl. He was pretty young himself, but they were younger. They were engaged to be married. He also took his little dog. His little dog went with him every place. Part of the myth of the blue mist is that this little dog loved to fly, but on the day of the accident, Mr. Ames had to chase him all around what was the future Logan Airport to get him onto the plane. He didn't want to fly that day. So the plane took off, flew as far as Randolph, and then for whatever reason, either Mr. Ames or one of the other 2 people on board decided to fly stunts, and all of a sudden it went out of control and crashed. Hundreds and hundreds of people ran to the scene, and one of the saddest parts of the story is I interviewed somebody, and the little dog actually survived, got out of the plane and was running around trying to get help for his master, but the injuries that the dog had sustained were so much that he finally keeled over and died. Okay. So it was a well-publicized crash. The Ameses were very famous, and everybody knew about it. And Mrs. Ames was left a widow, and she was a very young widow. So she ultimately remarried and moved away, and she donated her property here to the Holy Cross Brothers. And the Holy Cross Brothers ultimately in 1948 founded Stonehill College. Now, between the plane crash in 1948, there was no story of the blue mist. And there were no ghost stories at all associated with this place. Since then, Stonehill has become a mecca for ghost stories. Our current story of the blue mist was not the first time the ghost of Fred Ames appeared here. According to people who were students here in the early 1960s, he first appeared in one of the earliest dormitories. And people would be awakened in the night by a chill and see a person dressed in an old-time Flyers uniform, leather jacket and a leather helmet and the goggles at the end of their bed. One person told me they threw a pillow at it and knew they were having a problem when the pillow went right through the person. It disappeared. The reason that there was no blue mist is that of all the parts of this ghost story that I've told you, that's the one that we know is kind of made up. Okay. Stonehill, when it was first founded, had streetlights that were like the old-time streetlights that we had in Easton, that were very yellow. And sometime in the 1970s, they modernized and got streetlights that have a bluish cast to them. And what they didn't realize was when they had this fog come off of the pond here, the fog would turn blue in the lights. So if you drive by Stonehill on a foggy night, you'll see the blue mist. All right. One Halloween, one of the professors here decided to tell a ghost story to his students, and they had all of course, heard this part of the story I've told you. And he embellished it with the missing hand and the fact that the blue mist would come. And of course, everybody could see the blue mist, and everybody believed the story. And there were so many kids at Stonehill that had grown up in Easton that they told their younger brothers and sisters, until it came to be believed that there's one more piece of the story, that if you go over to the graveyard in back of Union Church and find Fred's grave, you'll find, ironically enough, there's a plane on the grave. It's the exact plane that you're holding a piece of. He had it put on his grave, or his wife had it put on his grave, because it was his favorite thing, even though the darn thing killed him. And so the story is that the blue mist actually doesn't come out of the swamp here, that actually it comes out of the propeller of the plane. Like a little tornado, it gets wider and wider and wider. It drifts over all of Easton until it comes to the campus. Okay, and so that's the latest piece of the story, and that's the story of the blue mist.
Right. Well, there you have it. The Legend of the Blue Mist.
Ooh. Well, that wraps up the first episode of the Easton Dig.
All right, this is a volunteer-run show. If you're interested in volunteering and helping out on the show, or if you have a story that you'd like to contribute, you can email us at info@eastoncat.org. That's all the time we have for tonight. Have a good evening, everyone.
Good night.